Good afternoon, and welcome to the Wednesday afternoon conference call with Trusts Unlimited. This is Jim George speaking. I'm the non-attorney spokesman and facilitator for Trusts Unlimited. I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call, particularly those of you calling in for the first time and those that will be listening to the replay over the next 24 to 48 hours. We like to move quickly through these calls and bottom line the information for you. We know you're busy people. We have a standard format. We spend a few minutes talking about the situation evolving in-country in Iraq, a few minutes talking about the program we've put in place to assist you, and then we go to a brief Q&A. So let's go ahead and get started and talk a little bit about the situation in Iraq. But first, by way of disclaimer, Trusts Unlimited is not the purveyor of the dinar and these other currencies. We're not advocating either the sale or purchase of these currencies, but as rather substantial holder of currencies ourselves, we're sharing with you the information that we think is relevant. Of course, the most relevant piece of information would be the potential window for the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar. Despite the chaos in Iraq, we still think that while January is pretty much done, we are still looking at the plausible reinstitution of the dinar in the first quarter, and I'll explain this as we get into this. Again, the situation in Iraq remains chaotic, largely for two reasons. First, the corrupt pro-Iranian political officials, which seem hell-bent on preventing progress in Iraq as a sovereign, non-sectarian functioning nation-state. Second, the continued Iranian interference. And over the last weeks and months, we've seen bases bombed, embassies attacked, demonstrators shot. The Iranians are doing everything they can to foment violence and chaos in Iraq for one very simple reason. They have a design for hegemony in the Middle East, and they want Iraq, a rich nation like Iraq, to be their client state. Now, the Iraqi people, unfortunately, oppose this. The demonstrations are only increasing despite the violence against him. But the Iraqi officials need to understand that the risks that they face if they do not proceed with their currency reforms and the establishment of a viable government. The UN has threatened to move them back into Chapter 7. The IMF has threatened to leave them in Article 14, meaning their currency cannot reinstitute. The U.S. has threatened to resume sanctions, and the exemption that the Iraqis had with regard to the U.S.-Iranian sanctions are scheduled to expire in February. The problem, of course, is that there are still corrupt pro-Iranian officials in the country that frankly really don't care. They're skimming money, they're embezzling, they're making money. Their loyalties are tribal and sectarian rather than in terms of their nation state. And this is one of the reasons why the United States military is going nowhere. Despite the fact that we hear about the reinstitution or re-upping of the status of forces agreement in Iraq, the truth is that the United States military will not leave until the government is stable, not corrupt, and not under the influence of Iran. Now, there was an announcement that candidates for the new prime ministership will be announced this weekend. Let's hope that that happens. Again, the U.S. has increased troop strength in the country. The death of Soleimani has basically said to signal that the United States has no intention of letting the Iranians continue to foment violence and chaos in the country. The United States is now monitoring all currency auctions, which they expect to subside shortly. And the U.S. is now surveilling and monitoring all CBI, Central Bank of Iraq, transactions. Last year, nearly $40 billion were funneled out of Iraq to Iran, which funds, of course, were not used for the betterment of their own population. but used to fund their terrorist activities in the Middle East. So they are putting the clamps down on Iraq, and this is why I feel that the reinstitution of the dinar is still possible in Iraq in the first quarter, even though, unfortunately, it did not occur in January. Now, why do I think that the reinstitution and revaluation of the Iraqi dinar is still inevitable in Iraq? And that's what I believe. It's a matter of when, not if, for a number of reasons. First, Iraq, per square mile, might be the richest country in the world. The international community, the United States, the coalition forces, and other groups have funneled between $3 and $4 trillion into the resurrection of Iraq since the fall of Saddam in 2003. Iraq has the second largest known oil reserves in the world. They also have the sweetest crude in the world, meaning that their crude oil has, for whatever reason, the lowest sulfur content. Why is that important? Because it means refining the petroleum is a much more cost-effective process. Only 1/3 of refined petroleum is used in the combustion engine. The other 2/3 are used in the production of glass, plastics, pharmaceuticals, electronics, nanotechnologies, and the like. If you're listening to this call, you're probably on a smartphone. There is not enough wind or solar in the universe to produce one smartphone. We are still wholly dependent on petroleum. This is why Iraq's critical. In addition, because Iraq sits in the Tigris-Euphrates River Delta, the silt has traveled down through that delta for eons, meaning that all of the precious and industrial metals are literally right beneath the earth. Unlike other countries that have to blast through mountain and rock, the gold, silver, platinum, tin, and all the other metals are right there for the taking. Another reason that Iraq is so coveted by Iran. Geopolitically, Iraq is critical. It stands between Iran, a country that is attempting the hegemony of the Middle East, and Syria. It also is the gateway to the East, and as a matter of fact, the most ambitious product globally right now is the Chinese Silk Road Initiative. That is to reestablish the old Silk trading route between China and the West. And that Silk Road ends in Iraq. So Iraq geopolitically is extremely important. Historically, Iraq goes back to the earliest recorded history of man. The Sumerian culture is the oldest culture with sophisticated written language. The first societal laws were written by the Sumerian Hammurabi. So for all of these reasons, Iraq is critical, historically, geographically, geopolitically, and in terms of the petroleum, and which is the lifeblood of modern society today. So for all of these reasons, I do not think that the United States is going to allow Iraq to fall into chaos in a failed state. And fortunately, love him or hate him, we have a president that I do not think will allow that to happen. Once again, for all of these reasons, I still believe that the reinstitution of the Iraqi dinar will occur in the first quarter. Now, there is one complication, and it's this. With the final passage of their 2020 budget at the 1180 rate, the payment from the government at that 1180 rate makes it extremely difficult to then go back and redo the budget at the new reinstituted rate. However, there is a possibility that the government can do what it's done in the past, and that is simply fail to make those massive expenditures in the first quarter in anticipation of the reinstitution in the higher rate. And so long as they don't make those expenditures, they can simply recalibrate the budget at a rate somewhere between making the dinar somewhere around the value of $1 and then make payments at that rate. So that is, as far as I'm concerned, a legitimate 50-50 proposition in the first quarter. Now, the worst case scenario would be as if that were to fail within the first quarter, we could be looking at a deferral of the reinstitution all the way to January of 2021. No one wants that, but that is a possibility. But we are still early in the first quarter of 2020. And again, if we can get some of these issues resolved, which the United States now is working on, along with the UN and the IMF, if we can try to mitigate the undue Iranian influence, and if the auctions and the CBI activities are monitored and surveilled by the United States, we could see the reinstitution in this first quarter. Now, for those of you that have not as yet gotten your affairs in order or may not understand what that involves, Trusts Unlimited has put a turnkey program in place to assist you, and you still do have time to get your affairs in order prior to the reinstitution of the dinar and these other currencies. Our program is a two-phased program. Phase 1 is pre-RV. Phase 2 is post-RV. Pre-RV involves the establishment of a package of pre-RV asset protection trusts with the assignment of your currencies on paper to that trust package. Post-RV involves all of the products, services, and professional referrals that will be made available to you after the reinstitution and revaluation of the dinar. Now let's talk a little bit about Phase 1, which is the establishment of your package of pre-RV asset protection trusts, again with the assignment of your currencies on paper to that trust product. There are a number of entities one can create to provide some level of asset protection. For example, individuals can establish LLCs or sub-S corporations. They do provide some asset protection, but primarily they separate business interests from personal interests. The problem here is that these currencies are a personal asset and not a formal business asset per se. Secondly, many courts have ruled that if an LLC or sub-S corporation is owned in the majority by one person or a closely held group, it can be pierced for civil litigation. So that makes the LLC and sub-S corporation inappropriate for your needs. Some individuals have established something called a revocable living trust. Now, such trusts will exempt your estate from probate and reduce and even eliminate, in some cases, the federal estate tax, but revocable trusts can provide no privacy or asset protection, so they're inappropriate for our needs. Some individuals have established single irrevocable trusts, which do provide privacy and asset protection. However, there is an inherent weakness in a single trust. If any asset within that trust gets involved in civil litigation, that will necessarily bring all of the other assets in your net worth into that civil litigation because all of the assets are owned by that one single entity. The only bulletproof asset protection available domestically is a package of irrevocable trusts, and I will be explaining a little bit more detail how that would work. But this package needs to be established prior to the revaluation of the dinar and these other currencies for a number of reasons. First, by establishing our package of irrevocable trusts and assigning your currencies on paper to that trust package, you will preserve your privacy and your anonymity. That's because assets held within our trust package are sealed, meaning that the general public will have no knowledge of your net worth or your actual holdings. Second, by establishing this trust package, you will have successfully avoided personal IRS scrutiny. If you are holding these currencies in direct title when they revalue, the IRS computers will most likely spit out an audit. And with the potential magnitude of this revaluation relative to your prior year's earnings, you're probably looking at a full-blown 6-year audit. Such an audit would be time-consuming. It would certainly be frustrating because it's going to come along at precisely the time of this revaluation when you have other much more important things to deal with. And ironically, the cost of a 6-year audit would exceed the cost of our asset protection trust package. On the other hand, If your trust package is in force and your currencies have been assigned to that trust, you will have successfully transferred the taxable event of the revaluation from yourself personally to the trust. Now, this is important for two reasons. First, there's less than a 10% chance of an IRS audit if this revaluation were to occur within a sophisticated trust package. And second, and most importantly, even if the IRS determines to do a 6-year audit on your trust, they will be unable to do so. Why? Because the only taxable event within the trust will be the revaluation itself. The third reason you'd want to establish this trust package is because included within it is our specially designed gift subtrust. You're going to want to gift currencies to family and friends prior to the revaluation, because without doing so, you will be subject to a rather punitive 40% federal gift tax. Now, if you're gifting currencies to individuals, you have no problem giving them the currency to exchange for themselves or giving them the U.S. dollar lump sum after you have negotiated the exchange. That can be accomplished outside of a trust with a standard gift letter. But if you are hesitant for any reason to give these individuals the U.S. dollar lump sum, you can gift to them through the specially designed gift subtrust. Because you are gifting to them through this subtrust, their U.S. dollars will be protected along with yours. It also means that the language of this subtrust has been designed in such a way that you will gift to them up to a certain amount of a currency or currencies, meaning you'll be gifting to them the exact U.S. dollar amount that you had in mind, irrespective of the exchange rate. But because you're gifting through this gift subtrust, you will be able to manage, control, invest, and distribute this money to these individuals as you deem appropriate. The fourth reason you'd want to establish this trust package is because it's been structured in such a way as to allow your estate to bypass the cost and delay of probate and the federal estate tax. I'll give you two quick scenarios. Scenario number one, you purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. The day after that, those currencies revalue for $25 million. The day after that, you pass away, leaving your heirs an estate of $25 million. Now that estate must go through probate, a process that ordinarily can take anywhere from 6 to 18 months. But probate is a public disclosure process, meaning that the general public will be aware of the size of your estate, who your heirs are, and how much they each stand to inherit. So if anyone feels they have a legitimate claim against you, your estate, or your heirs, they can simply file that claim with a probate court. And that could tie the estate up for years, and in some cases even decades. And your heirs will have either limited access or no access at all to their respective inheritance until the probate process is completed. Then there's something called the federal estate tax. This is the tax that the federal government would assess in order for that estate to be transferred to your heirs. Under current law, approximately $10 million of that $25 million estate would bypass the federal estate tax, but the balance could be taxed as much as 55%. Now, this scenario is not only unacceptable, it's completely and totally avoidable. How? Scenario number two. You purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. The day after that, you assign those currencies on paper to our asset protection trust package. The day after that, those currencies revalue for $25 million. The day after that, you pass away, leaving your heirs that very same estate of $25 million, but this time protected in our asset protection trust package. As a result, there will be no probate. There will be no public disclosure of your estate. Your heirs will have immediate access to their respective inheritance. and the federal estate tax will be zero, saving your heirs as much as 55% of their inheritance. The fifth reason you'd want to establish this trust package is for some very specific asset protection benefits. One pre-RV, one post-RV. Pre-RV, this trust package will allow you to circumvent something called the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act. What does that mean? Under our system of civil procedure, you can only be sued for what you own in direct title or the value of property at the time you transfer it out of title to an entity like our trust package. So let's take a previous example from above, scenario number 2. You purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000. You transfer them to our trust. They subsequently revalue for $25 million. You begin to live a lifestyle more reflective of your newfound wealth, and a couple of years down the road, someone sees that you're living rather comfortably and decides for whatever reason that they're going to sue you. Well, this prospective plaintiff has a couple of obstacles. First, he or she better have a very strong case and very deep pockets, because this trust is structured in such a way as to make it extremely expensive and extremely time-consuming to pursue civil litigation. But second, and most importantly, once this prospective plaintiff learns that pursuant to the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act, the only thing they could ever win by way of a civil award would be $5,000, the value of the currencies at the time you transferred them out of title to the trust, and none of the post-RV value of $25 million, there will be no lawsuit. Post-RV, there's a benefit I like to refer to as limited liability stop-loss. This will protect you from future bad acts after you have acquired this wealth. This protection is accomplished through a legal strategy called segregation of assets. This is why we've established a package of trusts, and this is how it would work. Again, we'll use the same example. You purchase 5 million dinar for $5,000, transfer the currencies to our trust. They subsequently revalue for $25 million. Now that you have $25 million in trust, you decide to make some purchases. So you purchase a larger primary residence, a vacation home, perhaps a half a dozen rental properties for tax write-off and additional cash flow, a couple of cars, a boat, and let's say an RV. But as you purchase these items, you place each of them in their own separate subtrust to be managed by your master trust. Now, how does this protect you from future bad acts? Well, let's say one day you're driving one of your new cars, you have an accident, the accident is clearly your fault, and tragically someone is seriously injured or even killed. Well, the family of the victim is going to want to sue you. But remember, civil suits are about monetary awards, and you don't legally own anything. So the plaintiffs would be left to sue the owner of the car that you were driving. Well, who owns that car? One of your subtrusts of which you are merely the beneficiary. And what's in that subtrust? Merely that one car and the car insurance policy. In that scenario, the car insurance carrier will negotiate an out-of-court settlement with the victim's family. You will not be involved in those rather unpleasant negotiations. The car insurance carrier will repair or replace your car, and this is the important issue in terms of asset protection. All of your other assets and net worth are safely protected in other subtrusts. Why? Because under the law, those separate subtrusts are separate legal persons or entities, and the plaintiffs would have no standing to pursue a separate legal uninvolved person or entity. So your package of trusts work very much the way a barge would work, where all of the valuable cargo is stored in a series of small compartments. Why? In the event that any compartment is ever breached, the only potential loss would be the cargo in that one compartment. The cargo in the other compartments is safe and secure due to the firewalls, and the barge will never sink. Now, these benefits are lost to you if you do not establish your package of irrevocable trusts prior to the revaluation of the dinar and hopefully some of these other currencies. Now, there is one other benefit, and it's this. If you are, in fact, a holder of one of our pre-RV asset protection trust packages, then you will be eligible to participate in Phase 2, all of the products, services, and professional referrals that will be made available to you after the revaluation of the dinar. I'll just make one mention of one benefit here. Trusts Unlimited will be sponsoring a post-RV seminar to be held in Disney World, Florida, approximately 30 days after the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar. Present at that seminar will, of course, be the staff of Trusts Unlimited to assist you with the management and funding of your trust packages post-RV. Many of our clients have already expressed a desire to establish scholarship funds, foundational trusts, special needs trusts, charitable remainder trusts, and even the more complicated 501c3 nonprofit and offshore trusts. And the proper way to fund those entities is with the direct transfer of funds from your asset protection trust to those newly formed entities. We will have our tax specialists at this seminar to assist you with some of the more sophisticated tax strategies that you will now need to utilize with this newfound wealth. We'll also have our independent fee-based wealth managers there as well. You're going to want to reposition assets after revaluation for a number of reasons. First, we know statistically that 95% of all windfalls, however large and from whatever source, are lost within 3 to 5 years due to inexperience, mismanagement, and fraud. We also know that under the new G20 bank bail-in provisions, the failure of major banks in the future will no longer be made whole through the general taxing authority of the respective governments, but first and foremost by the confiscation of funds at those banks. And so you're going to want to get a substantial amount of your money out of banks and at work in other markets. Lastly, we know the general global shift from fiat-based to Basel III compliant commodity-backed currencies in and of itself is going to create extremely volatile financial markets, and you're going to want a substantial amount of your net worth invested in tangible assets in order to avoid that volatility. Now, our trust package is initially a package of 10 trusts consisting of one master trust that will hold your assigned currencies pre-RV, your financial assets like bank accounts and investment accounts post-RV, and empowered to manage the sub-trusts, one optional gift subtrust, which can at any time be converted to a standard subtrust, and 8 additional standard subtrusts to hold financial assets like homes, cars, boats, etc. Now, this was the simplification of a rather sophisticated trust package that we've utilized in the past for our more affluent clients, a package that had an initial cost of anywhere from $6,000 to $10,000 due to the cost of funding those subtrusts. But by simplifying that trust package and back-end loading the funding of subtrusts, we've been able to reduce the cost to $3,000. Now, there are several ways you can pay for that. If you pay us up front, we'll discount the price further to $2,500. If that's not possible, we do have a deferred payment arrangement. You would make an initial payment of $525, which sum would offset our out-of-pocket costs just to produce and deliver your trust to you. The balance of the $3,000 would then be paid in $100 monthly installments. We charge no interest. The only proviso is once the revaluation of the Iraqi dinar occurs, any unpaid balance would need to be paid within 30 days. With this approach, anyone that has currencies and understands the need for getting their affairs in order and their trust in place pre-RV should be able to afford to do so. One other suggestion, we do accept credit cards. Pay us up front with a credit card. Not only will you get the $500 discount, but the minimum payment on your credit card would be substantially less than the $100 a month you would pay under our deferred payment arrangement. But we will work with you in whatever method works best for you. Our objective is to help you get your affairs in order and your trust in place prior to the revaluation of the dinar and these other currencies for the reasons that I've stated. Now, we will be going to a Q&A in a moment, but before I do, and for the benefit of our new callers, I'd like to tell you a little bit about Trusts Unlimited and why you may want to seriously allow us to assist you. Our trust package was authored by our attorney, Robert Bly. He's been a practicing attorney for over 40 years, specializing in the areas of estate planning, asset protection, and offshore planning. I myself hold degrees in political science, macroeconomics, and finance. I've worked in these areas for over 38 years, and I, along with my clients, were personally involved in the reinstatement of the Kuwaiti dinar in the early 90s. So between the two of us, Robert Bly and I have over 78 years' experience working precisely in this area. Now, Bob and I have actually been working together for a decade in the areas of estate planning, asset protection, and offshore planning. And it has been disheartening from time to time to see people walk away from sound estate planning and trust creation because of the mistaken belief that by doing so they have somehow lost control of their assets and their affairs. In point of fact, it's just the reverse. Under our system of civil procedure, it's when you hold assets in direct title that you can lose control of them. And invariably, it's at precisely those times in life that you need and want control. If you've lived for any length of time, you've either experienced in your own life or through friends and family things like unexpected divorce, permanent incapacitation, the onset of dementia, premature death and prolonged and complicated probate processes. Then there are substantial investment losses, business losses, and even bankruptcies. The number 2 loss of wealth now in the aggregate, courtesy of the information age, is identity theft. But the number 1 loss of personal wealth remains confiscation through civil litigation. Anything you own in direct title can be taken from you. So in point of fact, the only way that you can manage, protect, and control everything at all times and in all circumstances is through the establishment of a package of irrevocable trusts, and particularly if you have an asset like these currencies that you're anticipating a substantial increase in value. And we at Trusts Unlimited will do everything we can to help you accomplish your personal and financial objectives both pre- and post-RV as we understand them. Now, I will be going to the Q&A in just a moment. When I do, if the things that we've discussed here are of interest to you, I suggest you have a pen and paper handy. I will give you our contact information. I suggest you contact us to get our initial package. You're under absolutely no obligation by doing so, even though everything you need should you decide to establish a trust with us is included in the package. It has a lot of information about us, about trusts, about the revaluation. You can review that package. Contact us by phone or email if you have any questions. We'll be happy to assist you in every way, and there will be no consultation fee. I'm going to go ahead and open the Q&A now. 2 quick rules on the Q&A. We do not take service calls from existing clients. This time is reserved for individuals that are considering establishing a trust package. Our clients know they can contact us by phone or email if they have any questions. And second rule, for obvious reasons, in order to participate in the Q&A, your name and number must be on the screen. So I'm going to open the Q&A now. And while I'm waiting for any potential questions, let me give you our contact information. You can go to our website, which is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc.com. Our email address is trusts with an S, unlimitedllc@gmail.com. Our phone service is 307-274-4122. If you'd like to listen to a recent conference call playback, or if you'd be kind enough to refer us to someone that might be interested in our services, you can either go to YouTube and go to Trusts Unlimited, or you can go to IQD calls and go to Trusts Unlimited, or you can simply dial the same call number that you dialed for this call this afternoon, with the exception of the last digit. Rather than dialing 4, you'll dial a 3, and then use the same access code, which is 739-394#. If you'd like to be included on our email list, you can go to our website, go to the bottom, enter your name and email address where indicated. You should be on our email list within 24 hours. Bear in mind that we only send emails out very periodically pre-RV, but after the reinstitution of the dinar, emails will probably be going out on a weekly basis. So let's go to the Q&A here. Our first caller is area code 347. That's 347. Go ahead.
Yes, this is from New York.
Yes.
So, as a 2020 budget already been passed?
Excuse me. Hold on. I can barely hear you. You're going to have to get closer to the phone.
Okay, you can hear me now?
A little better.
Okay, has the 2020 budget been passed?
I'm sorry. I still cannot hear you. I don't know why we're getting all this stat.
Has the 2020 budget been passed?
Once again, I'm sorry. I simply cannot hear you.
Okay, could you hear me now?
A little better. Let's try again.
Okay, has the 2020 budget been passed?
Nope. There's too much static. I don't know why there's static. Well, let me ask you this. Did you hear my call clearly from your end?
Yes, I can.
Okay. Then there's a problem on your end, because every time you speak, all I get static. I strongly suggest you just send me your question by email, and I'll be happy to respond. It's probably a good question that everyone would like an answer to, but again, I simply cannot hear you.
Okay, could you hear me now?
Try it one more time.
Could you hear me now?
A little better. Give me your question.
Okay, has the 2020 budget been passed?
No, I'm sorry. I cannot hear you.
Yeah, okay, has the 2020 budget been passed?
I'm sorry. It's not going to work. All I'm getting static on my end. I apologize.
Okay, hold on. Could you hear me now? You still can't hear me?
Just barely.
Okay, the 2020 budget, has it been passed yet or no?
I do not believe that the budget has been formally passed, but when it does pass, if it passes prior to the reinstitution, it'll be passed at the 1180 rate. So while we want the budget passed, it would be preferable to have it passed in conjunction with the reinstitution. But even if it's passed prior to the reinstitution, as long as the government doesn't make an expenditure at the 1180 rate, it would be simple for them to reinstitute and then recalibrate the budget. We're just going to have to wait and see how that plays out.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Our next caller is area code 312. That's 312. Go ahead. I hope we don't have any more static.
No, we shouldn't. Hi, Jim.
No.
How are you?
Yeah, I can hear you clearly, but I know you're going to give me some static right now.
No. I was able to make out the first caller's question after he said it the third time, but he's muffled because I think he's too close to the speaker and he speaks too fast when you speak, so that muffled his voice.
Yeah, I think what happened was, as I said I couldn't understand, he got even closer to the speaker instead of backing away.
Yeah. I think he was just too close. So.
Well, I think I got the question.
You did get it.
Okay.
That was it. That's what he was asking about the 2020 budget being passed. Yes.
Yeah, and so it's irrelevant if it's been passed at the 1180 rate. if they make an expenditure at that rate. So let's hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah. Yeah. So with all the news you gave, thanks for taking my call initially. Thanks for taking my call. And
Sure.
my question is, has any thought or concern been brought to explain why the U.S. and everybody else who's saying what they're going to do to Iraq if they don't pass the budget or reinstitute the currency rate? What is it that's keeping them from doing what they're doing?
Okay, you mean the Iraqis?
Not the Iraqis, but the people who's threatening the Iraqis with...
Oh, yes, because they're trying to give Iraq every chance to get its act together and to expel the Iranian influence. They also want the pro-Iranian officials to understand that they're going to be thrown out of office if they continue these corrupt practices. From their standpoint, they're saying, look, as long as we're in control, we're basically stealing from the Iraqi people. They're embezzling funds, and they also know that they could be subject to the accountability and justice law once all this is cleared up. So they've kind of put themselves in a box, and they're kind of screwed either way, but that's their problem. Now, the UN, the IMF, and the U.S. do not want to do the things that they're threatening, but that is still preferable to allowing Iran to treat Iraq like their redheaded stepchild and continue to embezzle funds and to use those funds to foment terrorism. This really, when you strip it all away, what's happening in the Middle East is the Iranians are the one Islamic country that is determined to eradicate Israel. And that's unfortunately where we are right now. So Iraq has been put on notice that, you know, you're going to get a serious time out here. They're not going to be able to function. Basically, they will be under the caretaker or the stewardship of the United States and the international community as long as they're in Chapter 7 and Article 14. And unfortunately, some of the corrupt officials are okay with that because they know there are consequences down the road in terms of the accountability and justice law. So we're just going to have to see who prevails here.
Okay. So with that being said, they were probably given a time limit to perform these expelling of these council or government officials. Is that correct?
The only thing that I know is on a time limit is the U.S. exemption for Iraq on the Iran sanctions. That ends, there's a hard date for that sometime in February, mid-February. So that's the only hard date I know. But the IMF and the UN are notorious for making threats with open-ended back ends. For example, in the EU, when all these threats were made to Greece, Portugal, Italy, and I think it was Ireland about making their payments, they kept postponing it and postponing it and postponing it. But even if that's the case in Iraq, our problem is if the government starts making massive governmental expenditures at the 1180 rate. That's what we don't want to see happen. It's not that they can't recalibrate the budget if they do that. It's just a much more difficult process that in and of itself could take months. So our window now, our hope now, is that even if the budget passes at the 1180 rate, they don't make massive expenditures at that rate.
Okay. And one last thing. I was listening to a call yesterday where the gentleman was saying that the Dong, Vietnamese Dong, was backed and supported by all these a few countries, and then they said
China wants the Dong. China wants the Dong.
Right, I remember hearing that a long time ago. So that's always been on the table. But he did mention a few other countries as well, that was backing the Dong. And then he said the same thing for the rupiah. Indonesian rupiah was backed and supported by several countries, which was my first time hearing that. Can you shed some light on why and what that is?
Well, yeah, because China and some of these other countries are heavily invested there, and they already have forward contracts to assist them with infrastructure and all kinds of financial contracts. And remember, we do have the Silk Road, the Silk Road Initiative. So as a matter of fact, China has just signed a $60 billion contract, and they backdoored us in Iraq. So with all these forward contracts, they want to see the currencies revalue, so these people are in a position to pay China to come into those countries and rebuild their infrastructure. But I still don't see those currencies going before the dinar. I'm not saying it's not possible. It's just in my opinion, and again, this is just my opinion, I think it's unlikely.
Okay.
But I hold those currencies, so I certainly want to see it happen. I mean, I got 4 currencies. I'd love to see all 4 of them to go, and I don't give a damn which one goes first. I just don't see anything going before the dinar.
Oh, my goodness.
You know,
I've got 6, so...
I just want to go to the bank and get a little cheddar like everyone else.
I heard that. I agree. Thanks again, Jim. Say hi to the professor, and have a great day, man.
You too, Les. Bye-bye.
All right, buddy. Bye.
Well, Les was our last caller for this afternoon. Again, I'd like to thank all of you for taking the time to listen to this call. I know that the news is not what we wanted to hear. However, be of good cheer, because we still have a legitimate chance of getting the reinstitution of the dinar in the first quarter for the reasons I've discussed. Our next call is scheduled for next Wednesday. Certainly, if something of a dramatic nature happens between now and then, and that is a possibility, we'll try to get out an emergency email and schedule an emergency call. Failing that, we will be back next Wednesday, noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Thanks for listening, and have a great week, everyone. Bye-bye.